Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about keeping a pantry designed for your family. So, keeping a pantry. Generally speaking, I thought keeping a pantry was common knowledge that a lot of people knew how to do, but the more I talked to my friends and some other people I knew, the more I realized not everybody really understands the idea behind keeping a dry goods pantry. So I figured I'd make a video about it. I know I mentioned in one of my videos previously that I really like cooking, and I do. I like cooking, I like baking, I like all of that kind of stuff. And I've been doing it for a fair amount of time. So I figured every now and then I'll probably have a super basic cooking video about just the basics of cooking and baking and making good healthy food at home. So with that in mind, let's get into the idea of pantry keeping. A pantry is a place in your house that a lot of houses have. A lot of houses, a lot of apartments have built-in areas for a pantry. And the idea behind a pantry is that you keep dry goods in there. So like canned goods. Sorry, my lighting is a little off. I'm trying to figure out my lighting situation here. Canned goods or other dry goods like rice, pasta, boxed goods. So the idea behind keeping these items in your pantry and ready and at hand is so say you have an emergency at work and you have to stay really late and you have a spouse who cooking isn't their forte, it's easier to tell them, open a can of carrots, heat it up, and you got carrots. Opposed to, you have to chop up the raw carrots, you have to boil them, you have to all this other stuff. It makes it easy for those in your house that are not as skilled at cooking to make food. And then that's one less stressor you have on your plate if you are the primary food person in your house, so that everybody can still eat even when you're busy or when something comes up. Another example of pantry items being really good is, say, heaven forbid, something really big happens in your family and you have several days where you just don't go to the store. You don't go to the store, life is completely upside down and on its head, and you just need to feed the people in your family. Pantry items are good for that as well. They are good for a lot of things. They're good for if money is tight for a couple of weeks, you had an expense you weren't expecting. You don't have to go grocery shopping because you have stuff in your pantry that is good and that you can eat. And so it's not like stockpiling, but it's a similar concept. Buying goods that last for a long time and keeping them in your pantry for the purpose of emergencies or in case life gets busy, or if you're not opposed to eating boxed rice and canned goods and canned soup and that kind of thing. It can be your everyday eating. There's nothing wrong with that. For a long time, that was how I prepared meals. I try to go with a little bit fresher ingredients now, but for a while, canned goods and canned soup and boxed rice was how we ate. And it was because our budget was a lot tighter, and these things last for a longer period of time, so you get more bang for your buck when you're trying to stretch a smaller grocery budget. Now, the kinds of things that a person would keep in their pantry is very, very, very much so determined by the kinds of things your family likes to eat. Obviously, I liked canned carrots, so we keep canned carrots in our pantry because I like to eat them. One of the reasons we keep canned carrots instead of fresh carrots is that Jensen doesn't like carrots. And so for me to keep fresh carrots in the fridge, just for me, they tend to go bad because I can't eat the amount of carrots that I would want to cook and boil in order to justify doing that with fresh carrots. I wouldn't eat them all in the span before they would go bad. So I buy canned carrots because I can eat half a can one day and half a can another day, and I've gotten to eat my carrots. So that works for our family, but that might not work for your family. It could be that your family doesn't need to keep oodles and oodles of canned goods, but maybe a couple cans of green beans or corn or carrots in case something comes up and you don't have fresh produce in the fridge. It could be that canned goods are how your family prefers to consume vegetables. It just is. No one in your house really likes to chop up and take the time to cook fresh produce, and that is also fine. And so you would keep more canned goods of the variety that your family likes in your pantry, because you would not just use them for emergencies and in case of stressful times of life. You would also use them every day with meals to make sure you have vegetables. Frozen vegetables are also very good for this. We ate frozen vegetables for a really long time, and I still tend to prefer frozen vegetables over canned vegetables, but frozen isn't considered part of the pantry, so I'm not really talking about that today. So keeping those kinds of things that are specific to your family, whether it's instant potatoes, canned goods, canned soup, chicken broth, whatever are things that your family uses regularly and would be considered very basic staple items for a household, those are the kinds of things you would keep in a pantry. Dry goods that last for a long period of time that you can buy and put them in there and not think about them, opposed to produce where you have to check it every couple of days and make sure it's still good. These things will sit in there for a year, depending on what it is, maybe 2 years, and be fine. If you consume a lot of something, like say your family consumes a lot of peanut butter, well, say your favorite peanut butter goes on sale, buy 2 or 3 jars of it, put 2 of them in your pantry, one of them where you normally put peanut butter, and then you have backup peanut butter that you paid the sale price for. So it's about balancing what your family uses and consumes with the most bang for your buck. People who have higher food budgets and their families function in a more, we buy what we need every day, every other day, we don't buy excess, keeping a pantry is not for them, and that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. There's no need to really absolutely have to keep a pantry. Food is so readily available in our society that keeping a pantry isn't always something people have to do anymore. But it is helpful if you aren't the go to the store every day, buy just what we need for today kind of people. Really quick, I'm going to take you on a short tour of my personal pantry, and you'll have to forgive the lighting. As I state in the video, we have a light in our kitchen that's out, and it makes the lighting in our kitchen a little wonky because we have to replace it with one of those like clamp aluminum like mechanic lights until we get the light fixture fit. All right, so I thought I would show you a little bit of an example of what my personal pantry looks like and what works for our family. Please ignore my shadow in this shot. One of our lights in our kitchen is currently out, so we're using like a makeshift light, and it casts funny light in the kitchen. So this is our pantry. As I said before, pantry items mostly consist of dry goods, so like canned goods. I separate mine from tomatoes and vegetables and soup and fruit, but that's just how I do it. How you put your pantry together is completely up to you. As you can see, we go all the way down here, and you have like broth and tomato and marinara sauces. Marinara mostly down there, like spaghetti sauces and stuff. I have a bunch of those because dietary reasons. I bought a bunch and then realized that they're ones that really I can't eat. So I bought some more that I can eat and kept the ones that Jensen likes. So, but as you can see, we have a plethora of fruit and vegetables, and we've got some of the bagged potatoes up here. It's just, that's the stuff that we like. It's the stuff that we eat, and so it's the stuff that I buy and I keep. You also have some baking stuff, like the evaporated milk and pumpkin, because those are things that I use. I like to bake. Not everybody likes to bake, so those aren't things that you would keep in yours. So that's just an example of what my pantry looks like. I also have like baking kind of stuff back there, but that's different. This is more just like for weekly dinner kind of things that I'm talking about today. So you might be asking yourself, I don't have a pantry, but you know what? That's not a terrible idea, and I would like to try to start keeping a pantry. Where do I start? Keeping a pantry is pretty simple. I'm good at it because it's a lot easier than things like keeping a plant. Because once you put stuff in it, you don't really have to think about it until you need the stuff that's in it. So one of the ways that I would suggest building a pantry, if you don't have one but you are interested in starting, is list 1 or 2, 3 if you're feeling crazy, items that your family eats on a regular basis but are considered dry goods. So like canned goods, boxed goods, things that don't need to go in the fridge and that last a longer period of time. So cereal also would kind of fall into that, but we don't eat a ton of cereal at my house, so we don't keep it in our pantry. But anything that's dry and lasts a long period of time. Write down a couple of things on your shopping list for next time you go, buy them, and then put them in your pantry. Whether your pantry is a small cabinet. When we lived in an apartment, I had a shelf, and that was our pantry. And so this little shelf that sat out just outside of the kitchen in the dining area was where I put all of our dry goods, because the apartment we lived in didn't afford a pantry space in the kitchen itself. But because I didn't need those items super often, it was okay that they weren't in the kitchen all the time. So once you have your pantry items built up, another way to utilize your pantry in the best way is then when you're meal planning, you can say, okay, we have a lot of rice. We have a 5-pound bag of rice in the pantry. So let's have pork and rice for dinner, or let's have beef and rice for dinner, or chicken and rice, whatever you want to have, beans and rice, whatever your diet looks like. You have that rice ready and available so that you don't need to buy more at the store when you go. It's also helpful, as I stated previously, for when your budget's a little tight and you can say, okay, you know what, this week we can buy the things that expire that are absolutely necessary. For my family, that's milk and eggs and a little bit of produce. And so if we have a really, really tight budget time, sorry, my brain just kind of... if you have a really tight budget time, as you saw, I have tons of spaghetti sauce. So I could make spaghetti 1 or 2 nights for a week. And that's a whole meal that I wouldn't have to buy anything for. I already have spaghetti sauce. I already have spaghetti. All I have to do is put it together and it's a meal. Is it healthy? Is it the best meal in the world to eat? Not really, but it feeds you. And so it's better to have the pantry for when budget is tight instead of just not having anything at all. At least that's how it works for my family. So again, a lot of food habits and a lot of habits like pantry keeping are specific to your family and what your family likes and what your family needs. So please keep that in mind. I would love it so much if you would take the time to sound off below in the comments as to whether or not you keep a pantry, or if you don't and you are going to start keeping a pantry, what are some of the first items that your family is going to use? I know I have items that I think of when I talk about a pantry because that's what my family uses, like rice and canned carrots. But what do you use? What's in your pantry? What are you thinking about putting in your pantry if you're starting one? Let me know. It'd be a fun conversation to have. And as always, I appreciate every single one of you and your time, and I thank you for coming, and I hope that you all have a wonderful week. Bye. Anybody else's cat do this? I think she's coughing. Yeah. Good morning, baby.